Again, folks, Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. Setting in cool country this morning to put a little jacket on. Exploring the Psalms by Mr. Phillips. John Phillips, 1927. He wrote his first copy. This psalm, I love to find books that were put out by people who were concerned of souls more than protecting what they wrote in their book. If I write anything, I don't care what it is, if it's any good at all, I would like people to rewrite it, to print it, to put it out, to talk about it, to preach it, to teach it, to do anything. No restrictions on anything I say. I find this book without restriction. It doesn't say that I can't repeat what he said. I love that. I have the freedom in it to, on the air across the world, to repeat what John Phillips said, how he broke down, how he put together the words out of the Bible. The Bible, King James Version, is not copyrighted. You can use the King James Version, teach and preach, say anything verbatim out of it you want. Not so with many other paraphrases. They are copyrighted, and they have things that say that you can't say, that you can't do, that you couldn't preach this over the TV, or you couldn't do this without permission from the people that published it. And here we have a book that we don't need the permission. We have the permission from John Phillips himself because he didn't put a copyright on it. I have Wilmington's Guide to the Bible. This is another very, very good book. As a matter of fact, I went to college, Titus Baptist Seminary out of LaGrange, Georgia. And Titus uses books that do not have copyright. And they are very good. That's some of the best books, spiritual books that ever came down the pike are not copyrighted. They want people to be able to repeat it. What better way could you use your book if you're using it to enhance God and enhance the Bible and enhance people and help people to grow? Is allow them to repeat it. The Psalms touch all the notes in the keyboard of human emotion. What a statement. What a statement. That is a beautiful, beautiful statement. Listen to it again. The Psalms touch the keyboard of human emotion. All of the notes. It doesn't miss one of them. It gets you from inside out, outside in, top to bottom, where your feet walk, where your eyes go, what your ears hear, what your mouth says, what you do physically, what you do spiritually, what you do when you're awake, what you do when you're sleeping. 150 Psalms cover every single human emotion possible. And this word, the Psalms, they're a light unto your feet. They're a light in the path of life. He covers the fact that Psalms cover love, and they cover hate. They cover joy and they cover sorrow. They cover hope and they cover fear. They cover peace and they cover strife. They cover faith and they cover despair. No wonder God's saints in all the ages have felt the tug of the Psalms Lovers of the Psalms will welcome the commentary by John Phillips. If you love God and you love the Bible as a whole, and you love the book of Psalms, written way, way, way long ago, with more human authority, human sense, and more spiritual and godly sense than anything written today. I have poem books. I love poem. My daddy was a poem man. And I have poem books. And many poem authors are good. They are good. Man, they can put the words down. They can mince words like you've never seen unless you go to the Psalms. Now the psalmists were directed directly by God. The Holy Spirit wrote the Psalms in the Bible because they are godly. By godly men. By men who trusted in God. By men who didn't live by the light of electricity. Who had to get up at break of day to have some light, to be able to pen down, and the life they lived. What they penned down was not words that they dreamed up. It was words they actually and themselves had endured. There's an astonishing variety in Psalms, and therefore the author varies his approach to them. Each psalm, many psalms have different authors, and their approach to those psalms are expounded as a psalm in the light of its historical setting, sometimes emphasized in the way a psalm relates to the life of a struggling soul today. See, the Psalms were written in the day they were written, but they're written in today. They're timeless. Psalms are timeless. When you read them as for right now. This is for me right now. As I study these Psalms, I find every Psalm is written for today. The Psalms are absolutely, positively, write it down, they are timeless. I wish I could write timeless writings like the psalmist has done. He handles the prophetic aspect of a psalm. He relates to the coming great tribulation and to the great millennium. The reign of Christ in 2 volumes of Explore the Psalms covers all 150 Psalms. Find the place where you buy books on the internet and find John Phillips' Books of Psalms, 2 of them, 2 volumes, and buy them. I guarantee you what? You're going to buy them for less than 10 cups of coffee at Starbucks. You could forfeit 10 cups of coffee and buy this set of books in mint condition and have a menagerie, a lifetime menagerie of breakdown on the 150 Psalms. If you had no other Bible or no other use, these 150 Psalms cover everything. They cover Jesus from the day he was born to the day he died. They cover the life of Jesus. They cover the total realm, 150 Psalms, the total realm of God and this earth. Everything needs to be said and known can be found in these Psalms. Phillips, he had a narrative style. rich and illustrious. He will provide the source of inspiration and devotional thought for the general reader. That's the little guy with, not like me, with the 8th grade education. Yes, I've been to school, but I've been to school with liberties because of my little bit of drawback. Actually, the truth of the matter is, out of the 4 years of high school that you go to high school, there's only about 10% that's worth anything. If you could find that 10% outside of high school, you'll do well. I think it's quite important to know verbs, nouns, pronouns, action words, and to know those things. And I've had to try to learn those outside of not going to high school. Learn what you need to know to be able to read correctly so you can understand the words of pronunciation. And so that's very important. But let me tell you something about the Psalms. A child could read the Psalms and understand, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Wow. Wow. How about that? The general reader, his instruction, analysis of Psalms will serve as a useful tool for the student, teacher, and preacher. Student, teacher, and preacher. Student, teacher, and preacher. If you are a student, you need to be a teacher. Because you can teach those, everything you learn that day, you can teach it that day. And if you'll teach it the day you learn it, you'll learn it. And that's important. It's important to learn, to teach what you learn immediately. If you only teach it to yourself. If you sit in the mirror and teach it to yourself. But if you'll teach what you learn each day, you'll really learn it. Otherwise, it'll fall by the wayside. There was a guy named Spurgeon. He wrote a book on the treasury of David. One of the best books. Find it. Go to the web and find it. One of the best books written. I have all of Spurgeon's book sermons. And one of the best books, The Treasury of David. Since that book was written, next is this book of Psalms. It was rewritten in 1988, first time in 1927. He dedicated it to his wife, Jean, the loved friend and companion of my wife, my wisest human counselor. I've been married 54 years, and I can tell you right now, the ultimate end of many decisions in my life, when my wife put a stamp of approval on it, I felt very good to go into it and do it, whether it failed or whether it flew. My most faithful advisor, I can say that. My wife is my most faithful advisor. She does not mind lighting a stick of dynamite and telling me, you do what you want, but this is the way I see it. And she's been right. And my best example in goodness and godliness. I married a goodly wife and a godly wife, and a wife that is full of love. And I like usually to read the back leaf 2. This series has features that will make it a favorite of Bible students. If you're saved, you need to be a Bible student daily. Sometime during the day you need to be a Bible student. My advice to you is first thing in the morning. Let me cross a bridge right here. There are 168 hours in a week. God said that we owe Him 10% of everything in our life. That means we owe Him 16.8 hours a week in direct work, direct something. You say, well, I go to church. I go to church even twice on Sunday. So I'm 1 hour and a half worshiping God in the church on Sunday. And you might race a half hour of that, because a half hour of that's talking with other people and doing things. And even if you're not careful, you will hear in the church house. I believe it desecrates the church house to talk football. I believe it desecrates the church house to talk baseball. I believe it desecrates the church house to talk the weekly things that are going on that do not pertain to God. You ought to be able to go into church on Sunday morning and say, hey, I read Psalm 1 this week, and you won't believe what good that did for me. And pass that on. That you're teaching. You're teaching. Everything you do is teaching another person how to find what God has done for you. Detail. Alterative outlines in this book that Phillips wrote on the Psalms. The notes about the authorship. Straightforward interpretation of the text. Particular application to each one of those psalms. Each one of those psalms is a little book. Every psalm is a little book. There's 150 books in the Psalms. And each one of them is a little book that you can open up and eat it, taste it, see how good it is, see what's in it. So get the honey out of it. Get the good out of it. A place called the Bookstore Journal wrote that series I just read. Moody Monthly wrote this about Phillips. He says, John Phillips writes with enthusiasm and clarity. Wow. Cutting through the confusion and heretical dangers associated with Bible interpretations. He is unashamedly, literally, in his approach. He doesn't change what it says. He brings forth what it says and doesn't change it, try to make a new version of Bible. If he did that, he would be numbered with those in hell. Brother Peter, you saying that people that change the King James Version and make new versions are going to hell? Yes. The Bible said their place will be blotted out of heaven. they'll not go to heaven. Well outlined in illustration, well held interest of the reader, and well provided for Sunday school teachers and for preachers and for just everyday lay people. John Kohlenberger III gave this book a rave review, spiritually speaking, which is very important. I have now left on this excerpt 10 minutes. How long? How long? How long? Psalm 13. Asking God how long. Seeming that he was abandoned, that he had some abandonment in his life. He had come to a place where his life was desperately without hope, feeling of hope. It seemed that God had left him, when always, listen to this, always it's the other way around. Always it's the other way around. When you have a need and you feel forgotten or forsaken, it's because you have something between you and God. He thought God had forgotten him. He thought God had forsaken him. His sorrowful abasement. He has been brought low by his feelings. His foes. Feelings and foes. Pay no attention to. Do not pay attention to feelings and foes. They will hurt you. You've got to submerge them out of sight. You've got to do as God has done with your sin. Put those feelings in the sea of forgetfulness. Put those foes in the sea of forgetfulness. If you have a foe, pray for him. He will no longer be a foe. And by the way, you can learn a lot from your foes. Because if your foes see something in you that you don't see, you better pay attention to it. And see if he's right. If he's right, you need to go to him and tell him, say, hey, do you know you're right? And I'm going to work on that. I'm going to try to change that. You just changed a foe to a friend. Even though his advice was maybe slandatory or whatever. He tells the Lord he is overwhelmed by his emotions. Be very careful of your emotions. In Psalm 13, be careful of your emotions. He's overwhelmed by his enemies. You know, an enemy's only an enemy if you perceive him as an enemy, he's an enemy. Now, he can be an enemy and you can perceive him as a means of instruction. Now, if he's an enemy, and he's an enemy because you're doing proper spiritually, then you can pray for him. You can love him. And you can try to win him. Psalms are songs. Many of them were sung. He's singing here in Psalm 13, down at the end of it, or in 4, he's singing about God's salvation. And he's singing about the sufficiency of God in verse 6. So we're looking at a man's life. What do you do when you're in a situation? All life is situations. It's called situational ethics. We are in situational ethics daily as we go, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. That 60-minute cycle of 24 of them in a day. They tick away by minutes. We are minute by minute in situations. I would get up in the morning, we walk out of the bedroom, we look at this big clock on the wall, and it says what time it is. According to the type of person you are, that what that clock says may bother you. Some may look at it and say, oh, it's too early to be out of bed. Some may look at it and say, oh, I slept too late. Some look at it and say, wow, we're in the beginning of a long day. If you're living an interesting Christian life, days are short. Days are short. The hours are gone. I find myself between study, between putting these excerpts on here, between Bible reading, and between trying to keep the house up, I find myself in a strait on a daily basis to get all of the things done I would like to get done. I try not to study until I'm weary, which I do that a lot. I'll study until I'm worried. I'm yawning, I can't keep my eyes open. But much study is good for you, but you have to be careful you don't overdo it. There is things about ourselves that we need to learn how to straighten out and correct, and by following the Psalms we can find every aspect of everything we do and everything in somebody else wrote down about it. When you're reading in John Phillips' books, remember he wrote 1927. His words that he uses are good words. The words that we've used to replace his words are not as good. He said this is where we begin to hedge. Well, today's people might read that and not understand a bit of it. But if you read after the old stuff and a lot, you will see what he's saying here. We want God to deal with our complication. He wants to develop our character. We want him to change our circumstances. Many, many, many times in my life, most of the time, majority of the time, I've had to live through my circumstances. God did not immediately change my circumstances. He wants to change us first. That is why he allows the circumstances. We cry, hurry up, Lord. He says it's your move. I won't move until you do. That is what this little psalm is all about. Psalm 13. Standing still. When God moves, you move. Don't be stubborn. When God moves, you move. The psalm falls easily into three divisions. The keynote of the first division is the cry. How long? How long? I personally am in a position to where my wife has terminal cancer. I can't question God. I can say, God, give me the ability to be able to deal with this on the keynote that you would have me be in, on the way that you would have me to handle it. Just think, all I am is a spouse. She's the one with it. She's the one facing. We're all facing certain death. But when you get terminal cancer, it's a little different. Then you begin to say and question yourself as we go to bed at night. She lays in and says, I'm not a good person. And I say, babe, you're not. You're not a good person. I'm not a good person. There are no good people. When you get godly, then the goodness that comes from you is the godliness that comes out of you. If the godliness that comes out of you is the only good. Self has no goodness. Self is selfish. Self is compromising. Self is worrying. Self is selfish. Self is I want, I need. That's self. When you put self behind you and put God in front of you, you want to do what God wants, then you can say, in that area, I'm not selfish. Otherwise, human beings were born selfish. They cried selfish. Hurry up, Mama, and come pick me up. I can't talk yet, but I sure can cry. I sure can make a noise. Come pick me up. And then we go through life that way. Come pick me up, come pick me up, come pick me up, come pick me up. We ain't changed a bit from when we was a baby in a crib and couldn't talk. In order to do away with self, you have to put God in your place. The only way to do that is to change, and He wants to change us. But we must first desire to change, and then we can change. That's the way He allows the circumstances, and we cry, hurry up, Lord. He says, it's your move. I won't move until you do. That is what this little psalm is all about. The psalm falls easily into three divisions. The keynote of the first of the psalm falls easily in the division is a cry. How long? Let's go on. The word. But we have sorrow. What do you do for sorrow? You use supplication. What is supplication? That's getting the word of God out, like I said, that psalm David wrote, 23. And a song. It's in it's in chapter 13, verses 3 and 4, and 5 and 6. Here we have the story of a man taken out of a horrible pit and from a miry clay, his feet set upon a rock, and a new song put in his mouth, all within half a dozen verses, which can be read in less than 1 minute. Where he says 1 and 2, how long? How long? How long? That is how this psalm begins. It starts with two interesting figures of speech. The first is called, I'm not educated enough to use this word, Arestus. That's asking a question without waiting for or expecting an answer. That is what we would say facetious talking. And not waiting for an answer. When driven into the corner by our circumstances, we have all used this figure of speech in prayer. Audible or unexpressed. How we love David for being his innermost soul to us in this way. we have been there so often ourselves and have exploited with God over His simply endless delay in the same way. Here we are, the impatient human being that says, God, I want it now. Says, I want deliverance right now. Well, it took you a while to get in the mess you're in. It may take you a while to change it. You can get instant spiritual deliverance, but it takes a while to come around physically in a lot of things. You went to the loan company. You took your car down there and pawned it. And every 30 days the interest comes due, and you say, wow, they loaned me $10,000 on my car. Did they tell you that for every $1,000, there's $72 a month due on the interest? That's $720 a month you got to go down and pay to keep your car that you owned? Do you realize that when you dug a pit that you can't get out of, and you blew the $10,000, poof, and now you got to take a week and a half or maybe even 2 weeks work and go down and pay interest on a felonious loan. Borderlines on felony. Those loans do. But in other aspects of our life, the Bible says if you do some things, you have to pay the uttermost farthing. The uttermost farthing. I've had the uttermost farthing in my life in regret. I sit right here. And some things the Lord brings to me out of the past. And some things the devil brings out of the past. But they're going to climb up the ladder and reach up and grab you every now and then out of your past. Jesus put my past behind me. There are things that need to be taken care of before I go to heaven. And I would like to take care of some of those. The second figure of speech is anaphora. In this reception of the same word is beginning of successive sentences. Its purpose is to add emphasis to the statement and the arguments by calling repetition attention to them. For instance, the how longs go from 3 to 4 times. It is David's rhetorical way of saying, "Hear, Lord. Hear me, Lord. I'm talking to you. I'm trying to get through to you, God." I got news for you. First time David said, "How long?" God knew it. But he got to the place where he was frustrated because the answer had come and he hadn't seen it yet. When I worked, okay, have you ever been on a job where it was like slow death when you went to work? And the day was like being laid in a casket. And And when you got off, you said, oh man, one more day behind me. I don't know if I could stand another day or not. This is where David was. He was in that type of place. And you know who got him there? He did. He got himself there. We get ourselves in these places. And where we can ask, how long? How long am I going to have to stay here? Well, how long did it take you to get there? You're going to have to stay there sometimes if you've forgotten about God and left Him out of your life. Hadn't put your 10% in the collection plate. 10% of our time, 16.8 hours a week. I covered that a few minutes ago. 10% of our money is 10 pennies, 10 cents on a dollar. You need to figure out how much you make a day before taxes. And you need to write that figure on a piece of paper on the calendar in front of you. If you make $100, $10 belongs to God. 10%. Write it on the calendar. Debt today, $10. You owe that. Write that every day on the calendar. How much you made that day and how much your tithe is. At the end of 7 days, you add that up. At the end of 6 days, you add that up. And on the 7th day, you put it in the treasury at the church. It's called tithes. Do you want a peaceful being inside of you? Do you want to be peaceful with God? Give Him your 16.8 hours a week. What do? Well, I don't know where you are spiritually. But if you're not where you are close enough to God spiritually, in order to kick the thing off and get started, take your push mower. Walk out of your yard and start down the street. And when you come to a yard that hasn't been mowed, you go up there and knock on the door and say to that person, could I mow your grass for you in the name of the Lord? And mow the grass. And keep up with your time. Turn around and walk back home. Put your lawnmower up. And write that on the calendar. 2 hours today. Serving the Lord. You say, is that serving the Lord, Peter? Yes, it is, in the name of the Lord. What you do in the name of a prophet will be a prophet's reward. So that's just the start. That's something physically to do to start. Start with 5 minutes. 3 minutes. Start with any minutes. When you hit the floor in the morning, have a prayer time. Start with 3 minutes. Soon you'll be able to do it 10 minutes. Soon you'll be able to do it 20 minutes. Soon you'll be able to develop a prayer life. Where does it start? A baby starts crawling before he walks. You've got to crawl before you can walk. Carry tracts in your pocket. I don't care what shirt, jacket, whatever you put on, have tracts in the pocket. Little things you can send and get them to Tract Society. United Tract Society, look up the word tracts and on your computer and find out where you can get tracts. You can get them free. You could call Faith Baptist Church, LaGrange, Georgia, and ask them if they wouldn't mind sending you a dozen or two of them, their tracts. Yeah, it's got their name on it and everything, but people can use the websites and go to church at faithbaptistchurch.com, LaGrange, Georgia. And so there's a lot of things you can do. You can get out of the quagmire David was in when he said, how long? How long? How long? How long? Psalm 113. Let's see if we can come up with it right quick. And Psalm 13, excuse me, not 113. Oh, man. I have a funny thing. I did Psalm 12 out of another book earlier I did Psalm 12. And here we are in Psalm 13. The chief musician, the Psalm of David. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? He felt like God forgot him. God ain't forgot him a bit. He's got a problem in his own mind, his own heart. How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long will my enemy be exalted over me? Do you know the only way your enemy can be exalted over you is for you to accept that he is? You accept that he is. He's not. Your enemy is not exalted over you. That's a problem. That's a figmentation of your own imagination. Your enemy is never over you. He is always under you. The way that you overcome that is you say, I've got to pray for that guy. That poor guy's got a problem. He's got trouble. My enemy's got a problem. He's got trouble. I'm serving God. Take counsel with your own soul. If David was having sorrow in his heart daily because he was facing it wrong, his deliverance was always instant, always there. To put his total being in the hands of God and say, okay, God, this is not going to hurt me. Why would I let this hurt me? Why don't I rise above this? These folks are talking about me. Why don't I rise above it? Like Daniel did. He got in his window and prayed every day. Went toured Jerusalem and prayed. He got past all of the things that were against him. He passed it all with prayer. Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Enlighten my eyes. The eyes that David needed enlightening here were spiritual. Lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed against him. Lest those who trouble me rejoice when I am moved. Listen. He is actually talking about the future. That's in the hands of God. Who cares who says what about you? Who cares if they say, well, look, he's a holier-than-thou guy. He's one of them now the Bible thumpers. He's one of them Christ followers. Well, good. You're in the position you're supposed to be in. You're where you're supposed to be. But I have trusted in your mercy. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to thee, Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none who do good. The Lord looks down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there be any who understand, who seek God. They have all turned aside. They have together become corrupt. There is none who does good, no, not one. Have all the workers of iniquity no knowledge? who eat up my people as they eat bread, and do not call on the Lord? There they are in great fear, for God is with the generation of the righteous. You shame the counsel of the poor, but the Lord is his refuge. Oh, that the salvation of Israel would come out of Zion. When the Lord bring back the captivity of his people, let Jacob rejoice. Wow. Look, Psalm 13 is a psalm of lament, expression, a cry to the Lord for help. It is ascribed to David. The psalm is brief, even tense, but it is remarkably powerful. Its tone, its emergency. There are similarities between this psalm and Psalm 142. This psalm has 3 movements in it. A lament of the forsaken, a petition for deliverance, a confession and a vow of praise. If he had turned that around and had the confession and the vow of praise first, he couldn't have wrote the psalm. The psalm is written in the negative, and it should be written in the positive. He could turn it all around, and every negative in here could have been written as a positive, and he did come to that point in his life. Psalm 23 is one of the greatest psalms there ever was. See, David passed through Psalm 13. He passed through all the way up to Psalm 23. And he wrote some things about his adversity. But in Psalm 23, he goes on to say, do you know that God, all the time that I've been coming through this trials and these troubles and this work and this forlornness and everything I've come through, did you know that the Lord is my shepherd? I don't have to want all of these problems. I shall not want. I don't have to worry about what's going to happen. Because he, God, is going to make me to lie down in green pastures. David was in the same exact trouble in Psalm 23 he was in 13. In Psalm 23, every single person's in the same exact trouble during their life. But if you can face it with Psalm 23, that no matter who's against you or what happens or where you are, God is your shepherd. He will lead you out of that place. You say, Brother Peter, that's easy to say if you ain't hungry. But when you're hungry, it's different. And you say, Brother Peter, that's easy to say if you don't have a problem. But if you have a problem, that's not so easy to say. Well, I got news for you. We're all going to have problems as long as we're in this body and on this earth. And so, the Lord will be your shepherd. He will lead you from your situation. Well, because of the fact of being over 30 minutes, it's a drawback because a lot of people say, that's 53 minutes, I don't want to see it. I haven't got that much time in the first place. But what you can do is you can pause your machine. And as you pause it, you can pause it and come back and finish up later on. But I will go ahead and get off now at 51 minutes. And we'll see you next time. Just remember, live your life 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time. And don't be overly concerned about tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to take care of itself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.